You are listening to the Superfreakmedia Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, please be sure to show your support and follow us on our other social media platforms. Check out the links listed in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you.
This is a full spoiler alert for Season 4, Volume 1 of Stranger Things. If you haven't watched it, don't listen. Stop what you're doing. Put your cat down. Put your phone down. This is Slut Pop. Get your tits out and go and watch Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1 right now. There's your warning. That's all.
Then you can come back. You can come back.
Oh, and then you can come back. And if you're listening from Shudder or Netflix, send some money our way.
Seems fair.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of the They're Queer podcast, the podcast where two homos called Liam dive into the world of horror, get in a plane, go to Alaska or Russia. I can't remember which one it is by now.
A place with snow. Snow.
We go to a snowy place and meet some sexy guards and fight a demon. Anyway, this is a special episode. It's not like our usual format. Today, we're just going to be discussing our thoughts and feelings and musings on the latest season of Stranger Things. Season 4, Volume 1, dropped a couple of days ago, and the whole internet is abuzz. So,
as it should be. As it should be. I'm so excited it's finally here. Like, it's taken a good few years. The Stranger Things fandom has had to be very, very patient for this one. Yeah. And so far, I'll put it out there, I think it's really delivered. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I tell you who wasn't patient. Puberty.
It really wasn't, was it?
No.
I mean, well, we'll get into it because I think it's very obvious that some of these scenes were filmed pre-pandemic and some of these scenes were filmed post-pandemic. But they just, it's nice to see these faces back on the screen. Full disclaimer as well for myself. I'm sorry if I sound like utter arse, but both me and the other Liam have tested positive for COVID recently, so I'm still suffering. You seem to be fine.
We have the XCX variant.
We really do. I'd love Chris Whitty just to get up on the stand and just start singing Charlie XCX. But yeah, we went to an incredible gig last week prior to sitting down and watching Stranger Things, and it seemed that we got a bit infected, didn't we?
I think I caught mine off the poppers personally, but there we go. Knock it.
That's what Chris Whitty should be doing on the stand. But anyway, we divulge into other parts of our week. But yeah. I'm very excited for this episode. I'm excited to talk about Volume 1 of Season 4.
Same. With the length of this season, I told myself, I'll probably consume it in 2 days rather than the one sitting as I usually do. And that didn't happen. I pulled an all-nighter because I got called into work on the day that it dropped, so all day I was itching to get home, and then I had no one
to message because I booked the day off work. I got myself like all set up. I'd done all my chores for the day. I'd got myself like as many American snacks as I could. So I was sat down chilling, and I needed you to message. And I think you had to join several hours later. Yeah, because you had to go into work. But
well, the plus side of it is I got home and tested positive for COVID. So no matter what,
we've been able to binge as much as we like since then. Absolutely.
But what are your initial, before we go too far into it, what are your initial thoughts on our first volume of Season 4?
Well, first off, I want to say I think I was initially a bit, not annoyed, but I was a bit kind of like, I'm not too sure about this new release format. I know that they were like, well, we're going to practically be getting 2 seasons worth of episodes and content this time around. But I was a bit like, I don't know. When they initially said they were going to split it into 2 volumes, I thought, it's going to be straight down the middle. And we said when we had our recap episode, which you can listen to, guys, if you want to get up to date to obviously Season 4, we kind of said, the cliffhanger in the middle is going to be absolutely insane. And then we've got to wait a month again for the next bit. But they've split it differently than I thought they would. We've had 7 initial episodes. The episodes themselves have obviously been longer than usual. Some of them being like feature film length, like an hour and a half or so. And then we've got 2 more episodes coming July 1st. One of them being longer than Avengers Endgame, which is
2.5
I'm fine with
long.
that. Absolutely, I'm okay with that. I think if I'm being honest, and I don't obviously do this lightly, I think we kind of knew this was going to be a special season from that trailer, and by God, did it deliver. I think I have some gripes with it, but I think overall so far, and it does really depend if they stick that ending, I think this has probably become my favourite season so far.
Yeah, we've got, no surprise to anyone, we've got near enough the exact same thoughts on it. I was...
we're basically clones, aren't we, at this point? We're called Liam. We're both on this podcast and we both have the same views.
And we both take a mean But yeah, I was really apprehensive when I did see, one, the split, and also the episode lengths.
Yeah,
we'll get into it, but there are some gripes, and I feel like some of the episodes could have been shaved down a bit. But saying that, I feel like the good with this season far outweighs its very minute weaknesses.
for sure.
This season seems to be a complete and utter love letter to horror in general, which I was more than happy about. I mean, we first got the announcement about Robert Englund being cast, and that to me was like incredible, because no disrespect to him, but like he's getting on a bit. And
absolutely,
it's fair to say, like, to see when it was watching, I was waiting for his episode, and I was like, I need it to happen, and to see him in his element again, acting his absolute bits off, and doing what he does best made me so happy. But also, it's made me realize how much I need the Duffer Brothers to be the ones to take the helm of the Elm Street franchise.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I think the thing is, what's got me has been kind of the difference in opinions online before and after the premiere of this series. Like, before the series, obviously, it's been very in the news that Netflix is in the shit. They're losing subscribers. And I think it was put out there that they're spending so many £1 million per episode, the episodes were going to be so long, and everyone was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous, we don't need this. And I mean, I don't mind it. It is hands down, like I've said before, one of my favourite, if not my favourite TV shows. So I'm not going to be mad at the fact that there's more. But then obviously, since the episodes have dropped, it's kind of like, I don't know, they always warn you as to like what to expect. Like obviously last season was very much body horror, and I think there always has been a vein of horror running through each season. It's just that the kids, the protagonists, have been younger, so there's only so much that you can get away with. So now that they're older, you very much feel like these kids are no longer kids, they're young adults. They're now in jeopardy in a lot of these situations, and I don't know, I think that's why it perfectly lends itself to this probably being the closest, I'd say, to a supernatural, like, kind of slasher film as such. So, I'm incredibly happy with this season. Do we want to do, like, a quick dive into, like, an overview of where we're at?
Yeah. So, like, a brief overview is last season ended with the defeat of the Mind Flayer, the apparent death of Hopper, the actual death of Billy, R.I.P., Elle losing her powers, and the buyers pissing off to California with Elle in tow. And it ended on such an emotional note. Oh, God, just thinking about it now makes me want to well up.
Yeah.
So we return now to Hawkins in 1986. Now?
I think we're about 6 months or so, aren't we, after the attacks at Star Court Mall, or probably not, a bit longer than that. I think the main thing people have called out is obviously we've had about 3 years since that last season, so obviously these kids have grown 3 years worth of time, so they don't look like maybe only a few months has passed since Star Court Mall happened. But I think the main thing I really love is the scope of this season. Like the tagline immediately when they confirmed season 4 was going to be a thing, was we're not in Hawkins anymore, and we were promised storylines in California, a storyline in Russia, and a storyline obviously in Hawkins. And I was interested to see how they were going to tie all of these stories together.
I really love the stuff in California. I feel like it worked so well. I mean, it was really nice, obviously, to keep a lot of it in Hawkins, but to see the dynamics of these characters when they are removed from that safety of their home. Well, I say safety, it's not exactly the safest place to live, but like
absolutely,
that familiarity with their hometown was really cool. It was nice to see Elle be able to shine. I mean, I know that she shines every season, but I feel like in season 3, yes, she did get to, but it wasn't as much as everyone else. It was more about a relationship. Now it was like it really went into her as a character, and I feel like MBB. I don't say a full name because I don't want to say it 5 times in case she appears. I feel like she was really given a chance to show off some incredible acting in this.
I think it's nice that we've been able to see, because I mean, ultimately we've got the Byers family, so we've got Jonathan, Joyce, Will, and 11 or Jane being kind of obviously adopted into this family unit. They've moved to California under Dr. Owens' kind of guidance and help. They've got this lovely house in California
and 40 grand in the bank.
Oh, well, that's just Hopper's trust fund. So now that we know, not only is Hopper daddy, he's also a sugar daddy. So, I mean, I'm not mad at it. He's got cabins in the woods. He's got holiday properties. He's got 40 grand in the bank.
He can put a for sale sign and foreclose on my hole any day. God. That's one thing that's doing my head in, and I tweeted about this earlier. Not enough thirst about David Harbour is on my timeline at the moment.
I know. And well, we'll get onto this because Russia definitely comes with love in this season. But yeah, I think it was interesting. We got to pick up with these characters. I mean, it was sensible that they left Hawkins after 3 seasons of literal hell. So it was nice to pick up with them. But I did like the fact that 11 still didn't have her powers. She was very much now subject to a lot of human problems. Like, and I like that they didn't shy away from the fact that she's a lab rat essentially who's been raised in confinement. She's not necessarily going to know maths and English. She's not going to know social dynamics and all of this stuff. So it was nice that they lent into that. And
oh my god, the bullying that happens to her while she's in California is absolutely heartbreaking to think of. Like, because that's like, if we're talking about horror, that's like the realest horror that there is. And it's so vicious. It's like really f***ing vicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela.
Yeah. Well,
I know. Shame on you, bitch.
But I love that they didn't shy away from that. As supernatural and as weird as this show gets, it never loses touch with that base humanity. Which makes the show work so well. So while we're in California, we also meet Argyle, who is Jonathan's new best mate. Yeah, who works
at Surfer Boy Pizza, smokes a lot of weed, has incredible hair, I will say.
Oh, incredible hair! That actor has incredible comedic timing. Oh my days! It was like in the episode, we're jumping ahead a bit, but in the episode where they go on that road trip and he falls in love with Susie's sister. It was incredible, but also is a bit of a one-note stock character.
I mean, I think I'll get into my feelings as to kind of like which bits I think work and don't. But I mean, with us referencing obviously the human side of things, we've obviously got this new base of characters there. Back in Hawkins, we're still not ignoring the fact that there has been this loss and this tragedy. And I mean, it's all being referred to as a mall fire. We kind of saw that being the case at the end of season 3. Hopper is presumed dead. Billy's dead. The other characters that we lost to the Mind Flayer are all kind of put under this umbrella of being caught in this tragedy.
And the town is like bubbling. That like this is a town with like there's like an emotional volcano ready to erupt because people have had enough.
I think it just needs one person to shout "Evil dies tonight," and we've got another Halloween Kills on our hands.
I did think that.
But no, I mean, I will say I think my favourite bits, funnily enough, were the bits that were then still back in Hawkins. Like I liked us picking up with these characters again. Obviously, they're now in high school primarily. Sadie Sink, I mean, this is just her season hands down.
What Max, a powerhouse.
Just the whole kind of story that we're getting with Max this time round is incredible, and it makes sense because she's been at the center of that loss as well, like last season. Like, least Elle still has Will and Joyce and people around her. Like, Max pretty much lost everything that day at the Star Court battle. So it was nice to see how the relationships have changed, obviously with Lucas, Mike and Dustin are now part of the Hellfire Club, and we get the introduction of the incredible new character Eddie Munson and his ragtag group of misfits. Yeah, absolutely. I know we had some interesting conversations about him. He's played by Joseph Quinn, and I mean, he's Liverpudlian, so he's a Scouser in real life. So it's fun to see another British actor being a part of this like American town. His hair is incredible in this. I know it's a wig, but it's a great one.
They surprised me with this character because at first I couldn't stand him.
I think that he was obviously supposed to very much be an oddball and seen as that, because that's obviously what lends into the storyline of Satanic Panic being a massive thing, and the very real issue that parents and adults had about Dungeons and Dragons when it became popular. They were thinking these kids were literally summoning demons everywhere, which is a real thing.
We get an incredible X-Men reference with the Hellfire Club. Any comic book fans listening will know that the Hellfire Club was set up by Sebastian Shaw in the X-Men comics, and they're supposed to be this exclusive club who are a little bit like the Illuminati, and it's just people spending ridiculous amounts of money and getting into orgies and doing drugs and
sounds fun.
But I love that little nod because obviously we had the Cerebro nod last season, so as an X-Men fan I was over the moon to be get introduced to those. We get to see Robin and Steve in their element working in the video store. Their friendship is as strong as ever. I really love that Steve is such a good friend, has never accidentally outed her, has never told anyone else, even with how close he is with Dustin, has never told us. Oh my God, just their friendship this season, and Robin in general this season. I'm really glad that Robin got to be expanded on a bit more. So we've got that going on with them. I feel like I'm some kind of prophet because I've always said that Lucas was too cool for this group of friends. If you follow us on TikTok, you'll see our incredible 3-minute recaps of each season. And it turns out he kind of is. He's now...
Well, he definitely thinks he is.
Well, yeah. He's now on the basketball team. He's on the bench, but he's like a bit of a jock now. His relationship with Max has dissolved. His relationships with his friends is kind of dissolving as he's like battling between, you know, his social status now that he's a basketball player and still wanting to enjoy stupid nerdy things like Dungeons and Dragons. But also while we're in Hawkins, we only get a brief glimpse at first, but the most important bit of characterization for me is Mike's mum
Mrs. Wheeler
gets this incredible perm this season.
She goes full Xanadu. Mrs. Wheeler goes full Xanadu this season.
This season, we don't see much of her, but when we do, she's got this incredible blown out perm and this incredible like 80s style. She looks as stunning as ever. She's still with that douchebag, but also another character who we get introduced to this season, reintroduced to, is Erica, and Erica is just as fabulous as ever. Becomes more of a key player this season, and just doesn't give a anymore. Like she's like, I'll join your Dungeons and Dragons thing, and I'll school everyone on.
Absolutely. I think Erica is just perfection. I wish I had an Erica in my life.
I wish I was Erica.
I mean, I wish that for you too. Yeah. But I love that. Yeah, we're kind of reunited with all these characters. And another character, obviously, that we revisit as well is Nancy, who's now in a bit of a tumultuous time in her relationship with Jonathan. It's long distance. They're not really getting on all too much. And she's now looking to be like editor-in-chief at the school paper, which I thought was a nice shift. Obviously, we'd seen her going up against all the shit at the Hawkins Post last season, and now she's very much the woman in charge.
I fell back in love with Nancy this season after taking a bit of a dive with her, but purely because she's away from Jonathan. I think in this season, I have never been on board with Nancy and Jonathan. It's never been my cup of tea.
Yeah, I mean, initially, I very much was part of that. Like, I left season 1 wanting her to be with Jonathan, not Steve. But then it's been interesting how over the 2 seasons they have been together, I've then been like, oh, okay, I don't think this works.
I don't want her to be with any of them anymore. I want her to be with Robin.
I mean, that would also work. I also just want to point out as well, whoever she pissed off in the hair and makeup department last season, she's very much made amends with, because this season I think she looks great. Her hair is incredible. Her wardrobe's incredible. Yeah. I mean,
I think her mum, when her mum went to get that perm, she was like, "You are coming with me. I'm not looking at this helmet anymore."
Yeah, I think every wrong that's been done has been fixed this time around. And I suppose the only other kind of side of things that we then also get introduced to in terms of scope, and this is more in episode 2, is what exactly happened then with Hopper at the end of season 3.
Yeah.
And why is he now in Russia? Why is he in prison? And how are we going to get Hopper back to Hawkins? That's ultimately like the big question.
A question I feel like took too long to get any sort of payoff from. I was really happy with the way that Hopper was reintroduced. I really liked that we had that flashback to, oh, well, if you paid attention, she didn't actually see him evaporate. Yeah. And then from the teaser that they put out way before season 4, we knew he was alive. Thank God.
And in one piece as well. He wasn't maimed or harmed.
But then we find out he's in this Russian supermax prison. A poor baby. He gets a haircut, and normally I'm not into bald men, but oh God, that bit where they're shaving him, I was like, can I have a go, please?
I'm sure that's a kink for some people. I'm sure
days.
It definitely is.
It is.
Yeah.
But oh my days. So Hopper is alive and as sexy as ever.
I love the fact that they keep him alive just because of how much of a man he is. Even the Russian guards are like, this guy is so much of a man. We should put him to work. I'm happy with that. That's absolutely fine with me. I will say though, however much I do like David Harbour and also the character of Hopper, cannot stand his feet. He has very weird feet.
Oh, I don't care.
I have a weird thing about feet anyway. It's not for me. But there was a lot of foot shots in this season, and
I'm
didn't
not a
tick any boxes.
I'm not a foot person, but I'll worship anything to do with that man.
Wow.
I'd donate all my savings to charity if I could just get a mere sniff of his. Just a sniff.
I can't wait to edit this and just beep out all of these parts. But yeah, I suppose so. They're the 3 main kind of interweaving stories that we've got going on, and that really obviously highlights the scope of this season. I think the first episode was absolutely killer, and it really helped establish like each of these important zones that we were exploring. It established exactly obviously where these characters were now and what they were doing, and also in incredible fashion helped establish the big bad of this season, which is Vecna.
Days. The end sequence of episode 1 was my mouth was near enough on the floor, and I shat myself a little bit. So as we said previously, this season really throws itself into what people know and love about horror. So we end the first episode with head cheerleader Chrissy. She's had a lovely little heart-to-heart with Eddie.
Considering the life of Class A drugs,
They go back to his trailer to do something a bit stronger than weed. It's boring. But then things, we see a grandfather clock. We know that things aren't going well. And then we get the first look at the big bad of this season, Vecna, named after another Dungeons and Dragons character, who is this terrifying tentacle, skin devoid creature with an incredibly sexy voice. Now, that voice, it was giving me Freddy Krueger, but but I always feel like Freddy's voice was always a bit sexy anyway. If you look past everything else.
The 3rd-degree burns and
But and then we get into the sequence where she's lifted into the air, Nightmare on Elm Street style, and just broken up.
Absolutely.
She's like
snapped. Pretzeled, isn't she? Absolutely pretzeled. I mean, I think that was it. I think the Duffer Brothers promised that this season and the reveal of Vecna was going to be the closest to like a villain like Freddy Krueger, Pinhead, Pennywise that they'd kind of had in the season. And I think that's another thing I really love about Stranger Things. Every season, although we've kind of had this common thread of like a demo creature or like the mind flayer controlling everything, there's always been like a new big bad, and I love that they introduce it and explain it through a character in the lore of Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought that was great.
What I love about it as well, this is the first character who's been given, I mean, obviously we had possessed Billy last season, but this is the first character we've been given working through someone else. It's them.
They're like sentient,
and they're sentient. My god, absolutely. Like some of the dialogue that Vecna uses is bone chilling. So yeah, Chrissy dies. Poor Chrissy, R.I.P. She was a good actress. I got her confused at first.
I thought she was actually really good, because I know there was a lot of flack online about the fact that she's Casper Van Dien's daughter, and they were like, oh, she got the role because of nepotism and all that in Hollywood. She is indeed. So I was...
What a man.
So I don't know, I was looking at her under a close lens and being like, okay, do you deserve this role? I think she was great. I thought she was perfect.
Great, but it wasn't until the episode ended and I wanted to look her up. I thought she was the main girl from Yellow Jackets for the whole episode.
She's got similar eyes, hasn't she? She's very doe-eyed.
But yeah, that happens. Poor thing. Also, during this episode, we get flashbacks to 11.
I was going to say, we can't like miss the opening. Yeah. I mean, this is where it establishes this is very much a horror series. We've got an absolutely terrifying opening sequence, and the introduction then obviously of this villain and his threat as well. But that opening, Jesus Christ.
The opening, we see a blood-soaked 11 and the mutilated bodies of all the other test subjects thrown around her, with her eyes pissing with blood. And
I love the way it's set up, because
Papa's there like, what have you done?
I think that was it. I mean, it's been memed already, hasn't it? The fact that 11 or Millie Bobby Brown's going crazy in a rainbow room and killing people because she just hates homosexuals.
That shot where I've seen it.
Is it where she's crying?
Where she's crying and she's looking at the rainbow drawing and turns around. They knew exactly what they were doing with that.
They're not doing any favours, are they? They're definitely leaning into the fact that they vroom, absolutely. They just need to get 11 driving, and I think we'll have everything we need. But yeah, that opening set up obviously a lot of questions. It was nice to dive back into that. I think as well, what I found really interesting as well, and I've unearthed this again since, I can remember way back when season 1 dropped, and it was one of like the first interviews all the kids did. Gaten Matarazzo, who plays Dustin, actually spoke about like a theory that he'd spoken with the Duffer Brothers about, and he said what he thought would happen further down the line is that we get to see all the other kids that were experimented on 1 to 10, and that they'd then somehow something happens to them. They've died, maybe due to an experiment, or they've become trapped in the Upside Down, and then they are what turn into the monsters themselves.
Well, one thing they really needed,
quite scary that he predicted that.
One thing they really needed to do this season, with it being the penultimate season, is we needed answers to a lot of questions, and that is like, 1, what's going on with the powers? 2, what's the connection to the Upside Down? And I'm really glad that we got that. Joyce gets a package with a lot of Russian stamps on it, and she's like, oh, it's got a weird doll in it. I need to speak to somebody who knows Russian. And up until now, Murray, for me, has been like okay, it's nice, isn't it? This season was Murray's season. Hi, Murray. I am a Murray stan. If anything happens to him, I'll kill someone. She calls Murray. Murray's like, you need to be careful. It's probably a bomb. It turns out it's not a bomb. It's like a chain letter. And it's like, Hopper's still alive, hun. She gets a mysterious phone call from a really sexy man called Enzo. And he's like,
Hopper is in prison. I can get Hopper out of prison.
Well, can you just do that again, but slowly?
So Joyce's whole storyline this season with Murray is arranging a prison break for Hopper via Alaska and Russia.
I think, they did well to, obviously, I mean, from the trailer, I think we knew that they were going to be the ones on that side quest. And I do think it is very much a side quest. I think the primary focus is obviously what's going on in Hawkins and in California. I suppose, moving on, obviously, now that we've established Vecna and we've seen what he does to people, I think initially I did draw a parallel to the opening quite early on, like the way that the kids were disposed of. So I suppose we'll touch upon that again later. But I suppose that kind of clued me into where we were going with stuff.
Well, what really scared me was when we saw the way that Chrissy died in the trailer, they obviously showed Max being levitated in the air. Now, my initial thoughts were Max somehow gets powers.
Yeah. Well, no, we spoke about it, didn't we?
Yeah. But now, like, from seeing that, I was like, protect her at all costs.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially after the second person we'd seen levitate, we were like, well, this is definitely a thing now that happens before they die.
It's Nancy's colleague at the school paper then gets it. And so Nancy's investigating that.
I loved all of that. And I mean, I will say as well, I think every season channels like a vibe of a director. Obviously, we've spoken about season 1 very much being like a Spielberg season. I'd argue that I think this one's Wes Craven's season.
It really is.
The opening of episode 2, when we've got Chrissy's body being wheeled out, the music sounds just like Marco Beltrami's score from Scream, I thought.
And
Nancy's kind of a pseudo Gail Weathers now in this.
She's
role.
hot
I
Gail
love it.
Weathers. Obviously, her name's Nancy. So she's very much like Heather Langenkamp's character. I mean, if we say that, because season 3 for me was the Carpenter season. And then Carpenter, Clive Barker. This season, again, I feel like it touches a lot on Clive Barker as well, and Wes Craven, and it's this I think it's such a beautiful love letter. I mean, we get cameos and Easter eggs dropped throughout the whole season. We get to see Freddie at one point in the video store.
He's in the background, isn't he? Yeah.
My favorite Easter egg this season was the Elvira poster in Russia. I was clapping and cheering at that point. But one of my favorite things this season is the development of Robin. Now, Robin and Steve are like constantly having heart-to-hearts and talking about their love lives. And we find out that Steve still harbors feelings for Nancy, which makes sense. And Robin harbors feelings for, random girls. But with this as well, the greatest thing they do this season is they never explicitly say it, but there's the nods and the symptom, all the signs that Robin is autistic. And I thought that this, and I really like it. I really like that it wasn't a huge plot point to the point that that's all her character was, but I really do like that they were showing that like she's still capable of doing all these things and also happens to be an autistic person.
I think, because she's more involved in the group now. And I mean, in episode 2, we get this lovely moment where Nancy's, or I think episode 3 actually, where Nancy's being questioned about the death of her colleague. And then she sees the crew kind of pull up and there's no dialogue between them. There's just like a nice wave that you can just, I can remember just getting all warm and fuzzy and being like, oh, the crew's back together now. They're all going to be investigating. And I liked that initially the dynamic between Robin and Nancy was a little like jarring, like they didn't get on. There was this friction.
I read it more as these are two completely different people as well.
Yes.
Like, the Steve thing just happened to be happenstantial, but like these two are like chalk and cheese, like the characters that they are. But
Robin's very intense, isn't she? And Nancy's very like structured. And
but what I really love is Robin in the first episode is talking about when she's talking to someone she likes, she can't shut up and everything. She can never shut up around Nancy, and it's so cute. But their development, their friendship throughout this season was absolutely gorgeous, to the point where there's that scene where Nancy was like, you just called me your friend, and then Nancy smiles, and it was just like, this is gorgeous.
I mean, this is the strength of it, isn't it? And I mean, we've always said that the writing and how they get these characters to have these relationships that feel so organic is always where I think it's going to shine. I mean, speaking of relationships, we in episode 2 we go obviously back to California. Mike's now there for spring break, and this is where he starts to then learn that 11 isn't having the best time. And I mean, the bullying obviously continues even though they're not at school, and I think we all were in unison when we saw that 11, she didn't have her powers, she couldn't do anything like supernatural, she just gets a roller skate and she just fucking twats Angela.
I cheered and whooped, and I love that it was like, it wasn't even like a little bump on her head, it was a full-on gash, and I was like, that is incredible.
I love the fact that she's going to be permanently scarred now as well.
Me too. That's comeuppance. You, Angela. With that, it does put a strain a little bit then on Mike and 11, and then it gets this moment where 11's like, you always put from, you never put love, and you never say that you love me, and I feel like there's nothing to me without my powers. We get this then side plot of Dr. Owens, is it? God.
Yeah.
Comes and basically
offers a lifeline, doesn't he, really?
Elle gets taken away by the police for what happens to...
Which I do love, because one of the things I thought, although it was lovely to see Angela get absolutely ruined, I was thinking, in the real world, there would be repercussions.
Oh, with
There's
that many
consequences for your actions, But, so I'm glad that they did address that. But she gets a lifeline offered.
She gets taken away, and then we do think she's about to get kidnapped and, she's about to get, taken away. But it turns out it's Dr. Owens, the sweet angel doctor from season 2. And he's like, here you go. I can get you your powers back. You're incredible. I love you so much. You're an icon. You're a legend. You're a star.
She's a runner. She's a track star.
Let's save you. But also at the same time, the US government are shady bitches and are going to try and kill you. And we get this action sequence at some point where these really nice agents are like, let's save the boys because the US government turn up at the house. And they just get it. Get it. But
absolutely. It's very savage.
So Elle gets whisked away to a lab in the middle of the Nevada desert.
Sending a letter to Mike, and I do love the subtle shade that she signs it from Elle.
Yeah. Me too. And
I was like, she knows what she's doing.
To Mike, I'm going to get
You're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to become a superhero.
This is for Rachel, you nasty ass bitch. A blubber body ass bitch.
So she gets whisked away to a secret lab in the middle of the Nevada desert, and it turns out Papa is alive. His hair is looking as incredible as ever. I had to Google to see if it's a wig, and it's not, because he's always had great hair.
I definitely thought it was a unit. No,
he's always had great hair. If you look at him when he was younger, his hair is so thick, and his hairline is incredible. Anyway,
envious of that hair.
Turns out he's alive, and he's like, I can get you your powers back, but it's a psychological thing. Well, you've had kind of like a brain stroke.
Yeah. And I like the way that they explained it, because I think, it was a big question.
It's basically, she's suffering from PTSD and repressed memories. Now, to get her powers back, she has to then go back. So we get these gorgeous flashback sequences.
The hair's gone again.
The hair's gone again.
And I mean, it is actually gone as well.
Snatched.
Yeah, snatched. The weave is gone.
And we see some flashbacks of 11 and her time growing up in the Hawkins lab. And we actually see it wasn't, on the surface level, it wasn't as evil as we initially thought it was. It turns out Papa's character was actually quite benevolent in some senses. Actually sat down and spoke to the children, had a laugh with them, was nice with them. Obviously there was some up stuff.
Yeah, the opening, the relationship that he seems to have with that character, I think this is definitely the season of answers, and I know they've said that it has to answer a lot because it's setting up for the finale season next time. But delving back into that world, and I think they did it really cleverly as well, getting around the fact that Millie Bobby Brown is now 18. She's no longer an 11-year-old girl. I know there was some weird... I did think it was a bit uncanny valley at some times. Obviously it's going to be, we know she's not that little girl anymore, but I loved how they got around it. We saw her as her in those flashbacks now.
That's so I was going to say that was a really clever move by doing that.
Would you have gone back? Would you have gone back? Because as soon as he was like, we can get your powers back and maybe then some, I was like, yes, I'd 100% go back. I'd put myself through that again.
Yeah. Maybe she can fly at some point. That's what I'm hoping for. So
this is what I'm thinking. Something needs to happen so she gets mega 11, so she can absolutely just trash anything.
If she gets stronger, then that means that whatever's coming next season is going to be worse. So while all that's happening, Joyce and Murray formulated this plan via Yuri, who is a Russian spy smuggler, to get over to there. He turns out to be a bit of a bastard.
Absolute bellend. We have the incredible breakout sequence with Hopper, who fully tries to dislocate his foot to get his foot out of chains.
Yeah, he gets his ankle broken just so he can get his chains off. And do you know when they're hitting him with it and he's making those grunts? Well, once I finished the season, I went back to that episode, played it, and closed my eyes.
You dirty beast. But I absolutely love that. I will say, though, I don't know if you know about this, there was some stuff online about the fact that, did you see about the Monopoly game and that it spoiled a lot of what happened this season?
Yeah, well, my boyfriend pointed that out to me and he was like, just a heads up, if you see anything about Stranger Things Monopoly, don't read it, it'll give something away. Now, I don't actually know what it gave away because I never I looked it up.
Well, I was a bit pissed, if I'm being honest, and I think obviously so were the people behind the show, because it says that Eleven goes voluntarily back to a lab to get her powers back. So obviously that's a big thing.
That is a big thing, yeah.
And it also says that Hopper makes his escape on a snowmobile. So we knew that there was going to be this like kind of thing at some point.
Yeah.
I think there's another thing that they spoil, but it wasn't as kind of like major as those two beats. However much, I mean, I think the weakest parts for me were the Russian bits.
Me too, yeah.
However much I loved Murray, I found it incredibly silly that he was a black belt and there was these like weird action sequences. I get that they were funny, but it just felt a bit weird for me.
I just feel like a lot, like that happened too quick and then not enough happened. I feel like we should have had more of seeing Joyce in California and
exactly.
And then that plot line should have been introduced a couple of episodes in and then have that. It was to stretch that across the 7 episodes, considering they were all like an hour and 20 minutes long as well, was just a bit. There was bits where there was too much stuff happening elsewhere for me to want to then see what was happening in Alaska and Russia.
This is it, and I think this is where the season kind of struggled a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to obviously think about the episodes that stand out, and I mean, we have obviously jumped about a bit in our telling of this series. We will go to episode 4, but I mean, I think the where it fell apart was, yes, it's great that we had this scope, but we were like, I don't know, we'd just get to a really pivotal moment in one story, like particularly in Hawkins or even California or with 11, and then we'd hop to Alaska, and I was like, I don't give a shit what's going on with Joyce and Murray in this plane.
To me, when it particularly stood out to me was when they were going through Victor Creel's backstory.
Yes.
And I was like, this is the bit. We get this gorgeous sequence where it's set up very much like Silence of the Lambs. And it's beautiful. And then we finally get to see Robert Englund, and I was so happy because he does the absolute most, but doesn't like take anything away from anyone.
Yeah.
I really, in that scene, the fact is when they said that her name was Nancy, he should have said Nancy, and it really f***ed me off that he didn't say Nancy. I was waiting for it. I was like, he is meeting someone called Nancy. As much as even if I don't care how on the nose it was, this whole show is a love letter to cinema and stuff from the 80s and that, and then casting that like Robert Englund, he should have just said it.
Well, I mean, so we're very much on episode 4 now with what we're talking about. I mean, I think we have jumped ahead a little bit with Elle's storyline and obviously Joyce and Murray as well. But I mean, episode 4, and I think we've obviously spoken a bit about this as well. This series definitely seems to be about tackling trauma, PTSD, mental health, trauma, and and I think obviously the monsters and all these things that are going on are very much metaphors for that. And I think episode 4 by far stands out to me as the best of the season so far, and I think for a lot of people as well.
The episode 4 is what everyone's raving about online, quite rightly so. Everybody's calling for Sadie Sink to be nominated for an Emmy, and
absolutely, after this episode,
completely agree. This episode is very Max centric, and we find out that Max is just understandably really struggling with what happened last season, losing her stepbrother, but also losing a pseudo father figure, her relationship with her friends dissolving, and this whole episode is all about Max trying to come to terms, but also she's found out that the way that Vecna gets into people is by playing on that trauma, and there are warning signs to look out for. Now all the warning signs are all there for Max, so Max is somebody who's like, I'm gonna die. And for somebody at that age as well to think, I'm going to die.
Well, I thought it was obviously introduced quite early on that she was going for counselling. We saw her taking tablets and stuff. And I mean, I will say, I've watched this season, the episodes we've had so far twice now, since it's been out. And it is nice to rewatch it because obviously it sets up these common symptoms almost of this haunting or curse of Vecna with the headaches and the nightmares and the nosebleeds. But on the face value, when you first watch it, you think, holy shit, this is like a very, very young girl who I think, I think she's like 20 something in real life, but I think she's 15 in this. And for her to like just be downing tablets and going, it's a lot.
The whole weight of the world is on Max's shoulders, and
100%.
she pens these letters to her friends and family, and she has this gorgeous sequence with her mum. Her mum's pegging out some washing, and she's like trying to say goodbye to her mum. It then turns out it's like this up mind game by Vecna.
That was very Nightmare on Elm Street, that whole thing.
It really was, yeah. And it was terrifying. But then I'm just going to go through with what happens to Max now. As she drives up to the cemetery to Billy's headstone, because she wants to be able to get everything off her mind and be able to say a proper like goodbye to Billy. So she reads this. Oh, this heartbreaking, read this heartbreaking letter, and she's just talking to Billy. Then we get to see Billy, and we're like, oh God. And it turns out it's Vecna being an absolute twat. And then,
well, I think this is where I realised my theory of who Vecna was fell apart. So I think I then really knew, because obviously last episode we said I thought it was going to be Billy in the Upside Down. You said you thought it was going to be Patient or number one. So I think at this point, this is when I knew. I was like, sake, Liam's right.
But yeah, then she actually gets sucked into Vecna's world, which is like the Upside Down, but like
his boiler room. Vecna's boiler room.
Oh my God, we get to see these scary demobats, and we get to be in his house, which is very reminiscent of the house on Newbold Street from Stephen King's It.
For sure.
And we get this sequence where we find out that you can pull someone out of one of Vecna's trance through music because it touches a part of the subconscious. And then we get one of the most incredible music beats used in a TV show or film with through Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, Deal With God, from her incredible perfect album Hounds of Love, which is it's not a Kate Bush podcast, but
it should be.
That album like got me through the darkest time of my life, and I'm a huge Kate Bush fan.
Well, a lot of people say that, and I mean, I've said that for years, and I mean, this does tackle a lot of like very serious stuff. Like, I mean, her whole dialogue with Billy is very much about the fact that she was maybe thinking about killing herself,
and part of her was like happy that he died.
Yeah, it was
just the emotional beats in this episode are just like them being
it's perfection.
Then be scored by this gorgeous song and this incredible montage of a portal from the Upside Down opening up into the real world, and she can see her friends doing whatever they can to save her, and her running from this incredibly overpowered monster.
This bit, I mean, I have no qualms in saying, season 2, when we found out we were getting new cast members and Max was going to be a cast member, I was very much like, no, I want the original team. I don't want any new characters. And I mean, they did really well, because by the end of season 2, I absolutely loved Max. But I did not realise just how much, and I mean, I messaged you after I'd watched this episode, I didn't realise just how much I cared about that character. Same. And the fact is, I think this was the one moment, really, well, there was another one later on, where I really felt one of these central characters was in jeopardy. That montage and those edits of those really sweet moments, I thought, Jesus, they're wrapping this up. She's going to die.
I thought she's going to die. And I was crying, like, I was watching it. My mouth was open.
I literally shouted, run. Yeah, run, bitch, run.
Clutching my chest, and I was crying. Because the music dissolves into this like kind of like remix of the song, and she's running, and we finally she finally makes it, and I was like, thank I can breathe now. It's just there's not been a moment in television that's had me reacting the way that I did to that since the episode of Buffy, The Body. There's not been a moment in television that's made me have that sort of like physical, emotional and traumatic reaction to it. So that happens.
It really, I think it did stand out. I mean, I think, in all honesty, I think it's probably one of the greatest episodes of the show ever, if obviously not one of the greatest episodes of TV. And another pointer as well, just to point out, there's a tradition with this show that Sean Levi, the executive producer, always directs episode 3 and 4, and they made sure that he did these episodes as well. And I mean, credit to him, because he's handled so many moments, like iconic moments, like the light up wall in season 1, and obviously this episode is going to be a standout. So yeah, just sheer perfection. And the ending with those words of her saying, "I'm here, I'm still here." It's just
it's just like it's layered and nuanced at the same time. It's just gorgeous. And then the end credits roll, and we get this gorgeous like string arrangement of Running Up That Hill, which as soon as that gets released,
it needs to get put on a soundtrack somewhere for sure.
Gorgeous.
And you said it was number 1, didn't you, in the charts at the moment? Is
currently
that right?
it's number 1 in the UK and the US on streaming charts. And
deserves it.
Good. I hope this brings Kate Bush out of her little house by the sea, and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to do some shows."
I like that this show's done that for people, because there's going to be a lot of kids who enjoy this show who wouldn't have listened to Kate Bush before. I've said this before. I got into Fleetwood Mac because of American Horror Story. Because I was like, I knew them, but I didn't know of them.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people are going to find more of her work and appreciate it.
Thank God. And if there's anyone out there, we're not doing recommendations this episode, but my recommendation is to go out, listen to any Kate Bush album, particularly Hounds of Love and The Sensual World. And
maybe just go and dance in a nightie on a field somewhere as well.
I'm going to do that afterwards. Now I'm testing negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
While that's been happening, Nancy and Robin have been at this penitentiary getting Victor Creel's story. Since that Victor Creel was accused of killing his whole family and in a horrific way. But then we found out he was like, oh, it wasn't me, it was a demon. And it's quite believable. When you tie his story and what's happening with Vecna, everyone realizes, oh, okay.
This is the same. Yeah, absolutely.
And we do get this heartbreak. Oh my God. There's a moment. Now, I don't like kids and babies. But there's a moment where we find out what Victor Creel's trauma was, and he was in World War II, and there's that sequence where there's that cot on fire,
just on fire, and the screaming baby.
That was horrendous.
Done so well, because you don't need to see it to know what's going on. Even just hearing it is
horrible, absolutely horrible. But and like my final bit on Robert Englund is he absolutely smashed it with it, proving that he just gets better with age.
And I think my only disappointment is that I kind of feel like that's going to be it now. I don't think we're going to get any more. And I mean, it's not that I feel like we need more, but obviously selfishly as a horror fan and loving him, I want more. I mean,
wanted him to be back now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I love the little homages, obviously, that we've literally mentioned Michael Myers in one of the episodes. We've mentioned Freddy Krueger. We've seen him in the video store. And I love that he was scratching the table with his nails. I think Sean Levi said that was his nod to Nightmare on Elm Street, which I get. But yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you. He should have said Nancy at some point. It seems silly that he didn't. I mean, this episode was just perfection. The team up of Nancy and Robin, her whole monologue about women and overcoming struggles.
Oh my God. Yeah,
also, the montage with her, like, in the dress and everything, and just
every season's given us a makeover, and this one didn't disappoint.
This one was Robin's season.
But when we everything's at like a 10 from here on out. So the boys in California, who Jonathan's forgettable until this.
I really didn't like Jonathan this season.
Such a nothing character this season, and you know what? I've never really warmed to him anyway.
Yeah,
but
fair.
So the boys are being pursued by the army in California. So they go on a road trip, escaping them. They end up at Susie's house, who's Dustin's girlfriend, and we get to meet her weird, eclectic Mormon family. We do get a really sweet.
Is it essentially like an orphanage? I didn't get what the vibe was.
No. They're all his kids, but it's just because they don't believe in contraception, do they? So.
Oh, okay. That explains it.
They can't stop and giving out kids.
These kids are awful as well. Although I did like the little kid who was a director. I was like, that is 100% me.
See, I really like the Breakfast Club nods to the like goth teenager who we do get some nice comedic beats there. But what I really like with that though is I really like that they brought Susie back and they gave her like this, like, oh, she's the brains again. But I really hope at one point Susie and Dustin actually get to see each other in person.
This is it. Yeah, it's like we've had more Susie with everyone else but Dustin. The only times I've seen them together are like at the premiere when the actual actors have met.
That's happening. So they're on the run from them. There's stuff still going on in Russia, Alaska. All you need to know at this point is Hopper has been chosen, because he's a bastard, to fight the Demogorgon that we know that the Russians have somehow. He's preparing for that over there.
It's very Gladiator, isn't it? This whole kind of setup here. We've got a collection of prisoners knowing that death is coming and them going for their last meal. But obviously he's clued in. He's seen this thing before.
we do get some gorgeous dialogue with Hopper, though, where he says that he thinks he's cursed because all this bad stuff keeps happening to him. But the one thing that keeps him fighting is he knows that it's not a curse, it's his duty as a father to keep Eleven alive. I really love that they've really given him this like heart.
Tying back as well, obviously, to the scenes with his daughter in the first season.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I mentioned as well with the tie-in novel, there's like a lot of kind of stuff into that there. So I think what I love is just the fact that this is so in-depth. Like, you can tell that the Duffer Brothers know this entire story. And I think that's why it's wise that they're capping it at 5 seasons, because that's the story. Yeah. They know everything back. They know everything where they want to go. And that's it. So, I'm a fan.
And then, so when we go back to 11, we see a lot of just, because most of 11's story this season is her just being like, oh, okay, I'm doing my past life regression stuff.
Yeah.
And we get to see that she wasn't actually all that powerful when she was being experimented on, that all the other kids were kind of like outranking her, but she got some help from an orderly there, played by Jamie Campbell-Bower, who it took me ages to realise it was him.
The weirdo from Twilight. As soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, God.
So, yeah, well, all that's happening. He's just like, oh, I used to work with Number One, which is ominous. And he's like, because we don't hear about Number One at all.
No.
And he's like, oh, yeah, I used to work with Number One, and this is what they used to do to get the powers. And it starts working. And it turns out the reason why Elle like reacts so harshly to the bullies, like Angela and everyone, is because it's like PTSD from when it was happening to her.
Yeah, already. Yeah.
All that's going on with Elle. She's going through all these flashbacks to her past. We find out why she's being bullied. Back in Hawkins, the whole town has had enough. It's boiling point. They've had enough of people dying. The head of the basketball team was Chris's boyfriend, and he's like, it's these goddamn Satanists.
Very much leaning into the satanic panic side of things. And I will say, I think this is where it started to get really interesting for me again, because it did very much slow down, I think, after episode 4. And I mean, obviously, I think it had to. It couldn't stay at that level.
Definitely.
We were back into like Hawkins and the town. And mob mentality, I think, is one of the scariest things in horror films. I mean, it always has been. And I mean, Eddie Munson has obviously very much been held up as like this monster of the town, when we know full well he's completely innocent. And I think it was nice then to see, I don't know, this clash of what people thought was going on. And then, I mean, ultimately we then get the reveal that one of the basketball team is also being infiltrated by Vecna and has his own magnificent death scene over a lake. And I think that's when people start to realise, I don't think this is a human problem. I think this is very much a monster problem.
So, and because of that, he rallies the whole town into finding Eddie and bringing him to bringing justice. All the while, what I really love about that scene is all the parents, and we've never seen these parents interact with one another before. Yeah. And they just are. They're just the
There's that little scene where they all like run outside of Mike Wheeler's house, and I just love just seeing all these parents scuttling about, because they're like elderly versions of the kids. I just thought that was magic.
And we obviously get to see Mrs. Wheeler just looking incredible. Long story short, so the kids are just like, they meet up, they find Eddie, and they're like, look, we need to do something. Also, it turns out that every time that Vecna kills someone, he kind of comes into this world and leaves a portal behind. Where was the last time he killed someone? And Eddie's like, oh, on the lake. So there must be one under the lake. Turns out there is one.
I will say as well, you know how people have said that how scary this season is? One of the scariest scenes for me was that opening shot of that poor fish swimming by and then just getting tentacled.
I know.
I absolutely
I've been reading a book about an underwater... I've been reading an underwater horror book.
You've been reading The Deep, haven't you?
Oh my God, I'm not going to go into it, but it terrified the shit out of me, so it didn't help. So they were like, right, we need to go into this portal, and Steve offers to do so in a glorious moment where he takes his top off, and they're talking about, oh, he's got hair on his chest, and I'm like,
If I didn't like Joe Carey or Steve Harrington anyway, this cemented it.
I was like, oh, can I find him attractive? Turns out we're the same age, so yes, I can.
100%, yeah.
So,
also, Max, that scene where
Max gets the binoculars, just like, let me see, and it's silent. The silence is deafening, and I was like, in this moment,
go Max.
Max, right?
Go Max.
I've realised I am Max. She's a massive Kate Bush fan, and his thirsting after Steve Harrington.
Yeah.
Same.
I mean, just, yeah.
So yeah, Steve gets topless, goes through the gate. Then everybody ends.
Not voluntarily, does he? Because he gets dragged back down.
Then everybody ends up going through the portal. Then, and they end up in the upside down in the middle of the lake, and they get attacked by these bats. And this incredible action montage where Steve just goes ham on one of these bats that attacked him.
Oh, he could stamp me out and rip me in half.
When he rips the head off that bat, Ozzy Osbourne style, I've never wanted to be a bat so much in my life. But that was one of the sexiest things I have ever seen. And then, because he gets injured and everyone's dead boring, they have to bandage him up. And then Eddie gives him his like denim jacket. It's like, here for your dignity. And I was like, F you. He could have just had a whole episode of him being topless, but no. They're all in the upside down. And they're like, we need to find a way of communicating with everybody. And then Nancy's like, well, when Will was in the upside down, he communicated through light. So let's find a way. I really love the way that they did that. You know, like,
the particles.
Yeah. It turns out as
again, this is a season that gives us answers. We know now how Will did what he did.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that before, so it's great.
And we also know that the upside down as well is stuck in a period of time, and it's the period of time when Will first entered the upside down. We still don't know exactly what the upside down is completely, how it got that way, why time hasn't moved forward. We don't know that, but we do know a little bit more about it now, which is great. I really loved, like, because in one point, before the makeover montage with Robin, she's rifling through all of Nancy's stuff.
Yeah.
And I've got a theory of what happens there. So while all that's happening, they are looking for guns while they're there.
I think that's when they come to the realisation, isn't it, that the upside down is stuck on the day that Will first went missing, which I think is obviously going to become significant. I have my theories about this. I will say, I mean, there's two things I just want to talk about here with that. I love that we got another version of the iconic light wall scene with the glow toy. I can't remember the name of them, but I know I used to have one when I was a kid. And I loved how they did that with obviously them tracing the...
Stunning.
Such a cool idea as well. And obviously, again, this is going a bit further down the line because we're obviously very much getting to the end of this season volume 1 now. We realise, obviously, as soon as we realised at this point that this was when Will went missing, my first thought was, okay, there's opportunities here for us to save characters. And I was like, okay, this needs to be utilised then. And my first thought was Barb, which is something we do obviously get to see later. And I'm not too sure whether or not it is going to be something that's kind of touched upon again. But I mean, we'll get into that obviously with the end, because obviously that's very much at the end. But when I mentioned about Max, there being obviously this, where we thought we were definitely going to lose this character, the opening of this episode, I very much thought we might lose Steve. The bats aren't dangerous on their own. It's just when they flock. And I mean, I love that we're getting like a new creature every episode. I also love that they're like spies as well, because it feeds into obviously this hive mind like thing that we've established. Like one of these things knows where you are. The entire world knows where you are. So I found that really, really interesting. And I mean, I think it was, I ultimately it leads to them both heading to Eddie Munson's cabin in the upside down and in the real world, them breaking through the ceiling and them having this weird literal upside down moment of them climbing through, which then gives that there's a big twist then at the end that Nancy's going through, and then she's also now under Vecna's control. And
then we get to see Barb again.
Well, this was it. This is where I thought, you know, as soon as she got pulled into the swimming pool, I was like, holy fucking shit, there's going to be a Demogorgon here. We're going to see Barb get pulled into it. Like, how amazing would that be if she then got the redemption to then save that character? But then they saw a weird slug body of her. What's up
in the air at the moment is what's going to happen to Nancy? Because obviously I've got a theory of how Nancy's going to be saved.
I don't think she's going to die.
No, but I feel like I know who's going to save her. I feel like Robin's going to save her, because when Robin was going through her belongings during the makeover montage, she came across some tapes, and I reckon she pocketed one, and they're going to put some music on. But I really feel
that would be interesting.
I really feel like Steve's going to get it. And I don't want it to happen, but I really feel like they're going to kill off Steve, and I'm going to be really angry because it's the perfect, in that way, it's the perfect opportunity to do so from a writing point of view, because he's just like, he's got this emotional connection to Nancy, and he's going to be the one to save her. and it's going to spur Nancy to go on. It's also then you've got Dustin there, who's like his.
I was going to say, we're cementing about how much he has these really great relationships with people like Robin, Dustin, Nancy.
Everybody
people
who
are going to miss him.
matters to Steve is there, so I've got a feeling it's going to happen.
Plus, he's already been injured as well, so he's not at full Steve power.
At the last minute, Eddie jumps back through and takes one for the team. Hope so.
Yeah, I mean, it would be expected, I think, for the new arrival to be the one that goes.
Yeah.
But I do very much think that they are going to... I think we're going to at least lose one of the big players.
Yeah. not to coin another franchise, but we are literally in the end game now. In Alaska in Russia, Joyce and Hopper are reunited after he has a battle with the Demogorgon that they've got there.
Yeah, we took far too long to get to that. I mean, that was a big set piece that was promised in the trailer, and it took a while.
Don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful reunion and it made me really happy.
Mm-hmm.
So where we are with them at the moment is how the are they going to get back to Hawkins?
Yeah, but I mean, this is it. Yeah, so there is this battle in this like Colosseum of sorts in the Russian prison. Hopper and sexy Enzo are still alive, which is great. The door's been shut, the Demogorgon's the other side of it, and Joyce and Murray have full control now, it seems, of the base, which is great. Obviously, all of this was coming to a head. I mean, the one thing that we don't really see any more of, which I was a bit confused by, was the California group. We don't really see where they're at after Susie is, so God knows what's happening there. Obviously, there's a few things I think we need to discuss about that. From the teaser that was kind of then released straight after, so if you watch all of the episodes, you then get a teaser trailer at the end. It looks like Hopper and co are very much staying in Russia for a while. There seems to be a weird cloud monster thing. I don't know if this is going to be the Mind Flayer again in some containment. There looks to be another dead Demogorgon in a cage case.
It's never explained how the Russians managed to get their hands on a Demogorgon. So that's going to be cool.
So I think that's they're going to stay there for a while. I think, in all honesty, I mean, I think it would be bold for them to maybe get rid of Hopper properly. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I mean, it will be ballsy. I think Murray's going to be the one who gets it, and I don't think Enzo's going to do too well either.
No, Murray and Enzo are going to go, and that's really going to upset me because I really warmed to Murray, and watching season 3 back as well. I love him in season 3. And a bit where he's at the fair and he's like, I love it.
Well, I think this is it. Like, he started off he's been right there from the start. Like, that first episode where Joyce reports Will's missing, he's that crazy conspiracy theorist coming into Hopper's office like the Russians are in town and no one believes him. So to see where it's all like led, and this again, it speaks of obviously the fact how informed the writers are and them knowing what they've wanted to do from the start. But yeah, I mean, it seemingly, I mean, the big obviously reveal at the end is that we now know who Vecna is as well. 11 has now been thrown into the worst memory because they're basically needing to speed things up, and she sees this massacre in the Rainbow Room and obviously the facility,
which we've been led to believe that she was the one who
very cleverly as well. Like, I mean, obviously him saying, you've got Popper turning around to her and saying, what have you done? You then kind of realise what she's actually done is she inadvertently released number 1 upon everyone because she removed his like power subduing
he had
device.
Like an inhibitor chip, and she removed that, and it turns out he had that because he was the one who killed his parents, and he was just too powerful.
He was the Creel's son, wasn't he?
So it turns out he's the Creel's son, which I watched it for a second time, and when they said that he slipped into a coma and didn't die, I missed that the first time. I missed that the first time. So watching it the second time, I was like, oh, it kind of does set it up. But I did enjoy the reveal. I'm really intrigued though, because we know that 11 and him have like a battle, and she's the one who sends him into the Upside Down.
Well, she essentially vaporizes him,
sends him into the Upside Down, where he gets mutilated into this Vecna creature. But I just want to know how he becomes, what he becomes in the Upside Down. I need to know. I need to know more about the Upside Down.
There's so many questions with it. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I think the last episode I didn't really enjoy all that much. It was obviously one of the longer ones. I felt it was way too exposition-y. Like, they were really shoehorning in like, this is Vecna, he's number 1, he's the one who's, and I didn't think it was the most like it wasn't the biggest twist. I personally don't really see him turning into Vecna. Like, I don't find him that intimidating. And I don't know. I think we need obviously more of that. My question lies with, obviously, well, what's happened then? Has she created this character? And also, why did it take him so long to then start again? Like, doing these things? Because there's been a 7-year gap from obviously him going through to then now attacking teenagers. I think a lot is obviously going to be answered in these last two episodes, but seemingly I think she seems to now be in control of things again and knows how to maybe engage her powers. We've seen like her getting rumblings of stuff back again, so I wouldn't be surprised if we pick up and she's now then going to head to Hawkins.
So I'm wondering, I feel like the Mind Flayer is going to come back to it, obviously, and I do want to just know more about the Upside Down mythos that I hope get answered. I need to know why it's stuck in that certain period of time and hasn't moved on, considering that other people have gone back and forth into it since then.
Yes.
It's like other things have happened since then. A whole new like big gate opened up, but why is time not moved forward whatsoever with it? I need to know how the Russians first discovered it as well, because we don't know that. You can't just point a laser at a wall and then discover it that way. So
I mean, obviously, there's a lot that still needs to be answered. There's a lot of plot holes, but I think they're going to answer certain questions, but they very much already said these last 2 episodes in particular are very much going to set up this foundation for this massive finale next season, which I'm ready for.
As I said, as much as like the Alaska-Russia subplot was like, the way that I would have edited it, as I said before, was introduce that subplot a bit later on. Still show us Hopper, but not the whole journey to getting him there and stuff like that. That could have been done in the last like 3 episodes to me. But
I think it would have made more sense. But then at the same time, I think I don't know. It was obviously a very difficult balancing act. Like, they had to keep revisiting these stories every episode, because otherwise we would have gone into season 2 territory where the penultimate episode becomes a completely different story, and then we're back to the action.
Speaking of season 2, what really confused me is that we never got to see number 8.
Well, they did make reference to her, didn't they, when she was revisiting the memory of her mum, that she escaped or she was not there or something.
It was so good. I was like,
I was expecting to at least see her. One of these
kids has to be her, surely. But that's whatever.
By the by,
I have complete and utter faith in them, because this is such a standout season, and I was expecting. It sounds awful, but I was so like apprehensive. I was really thought they were going to jump the shark with this season. I thought there's something. It's going to be too much, but it just wasn't. I feel like it's so wet. Like, this is. I really hope that this gets more people back into the show, because I know some people dropped off.
I think it will. I think it definitely will, because it's been a return to form for it. I mean, it is completely different, I think, than the other seasons, but still packs the same punch. I definitely had that moment of, before starting to watch it, thinking, shit, what if I really don't like this? Because it happens with plenty of other TV shows. And I was absolutely blown away with how much I absolutely loved it. I mean, even from the opening, I knew I was going to be in.
You can see where the money's been spent as well, because it looks gorgeous. Not to go back to episode 4 again, but that whole sequence in episode 4, it's just
so cinematic,
so gorgeous. I mean, you can say it was money well spent to me. This whole thing was money completely well spent. I really like so much of the tie-in going into it. Like, I really love like some of the merch that's coming out of it this season, of which I own most of the Primark range. Shout out,
I need to get there as soon as I'm COVID free. I'm going and I'm nabbing as much as I can.
Shout out to Primark for their incredible Stranger Things collab this year. So good. But yeah, there's so much great stuff coming out. I can't wait for the soundtrack release. I mean, everything's looking great. The posters, stunning. The soundtrack, as usual. I really love that we got to hear "She'll Kill You" again. That made me really like. That's my favorite piece of music. We got to hear "Kids" again. Right.
It was when they were hitting these really familiar beats. I did admire that we dipped back into the OG soundtrack. Obviously, when she's back in the lab and being subjected to all this stuff and getting her powers back, and it was great. There are obviously some there's one thing that I think we really need to discuss as a queer podcast, and then there's also some theories I'd really love to run through with you, if that's okay, in closing of this episode. The main thing that we were all very curious about, and we obviously spoke about on our recap episode, was the character of Will, where Will was going to go, whether or not we'd get the big reveal that Will is actually a queer character. And by God, it's definitely, I think, looking that way, isn't it?
So there are a couple of things. I feel like, again, Will had a couple of nice moments, but part of me is glad that they've kind of stepped away from Will a little bit, because just too much has happened to the poor lad. There's definitely hints there that he's got these feelings towards Mike. We don't know what his painting is yet. If it's a complete red herring and it's not actually like a portrait of him and Mike, but it happens to be the Mind Flayer or something, I'll be... And he's
absolutely, yeah. Well,
that'll be cool.
Yeah, this is it. I think it's either going to be that. I mean, I don't really know, like, if it was a picture of him and Mike. I mean, I think they're hinting, obviously. I thought that scene was really touching, where he was basically saying he just wanted his best friend back, and he found it hard to open up to people and say, and I mean, as well, when they were having to talk about their figures of influence or historical figures, his was Alan Turing, wasn't it? So I was like, well, that's for the people who know what they're looking for.
Well,
that's good.
What gets me is there's just been an interview with Noah Schnapp, and he was like, if they don't address his sexuality, they never say anything about it, because they just want to leave it up to viewer interpretation. And I'm like, if that happens to be the case,
I don't think that's going to be the case this season. I think.
He said that like in the last couple of days since the release. He's like, I'll send you the tweet, and if that is the case, I will be very severely disappointed.
I mean, well, we said they don't have to figure it out, but
they don't. But you can't set something up in the way that they have done, and I feel like they really have done. Particularly with this season, they can't set it up like that to only do what they did with like Sherlock and everything and just have it like completely queer baited. Well,
you had the girl next to him in class playing footsie with him, which he pulled away. And obviously made it very apparent he wasn't interested. Yeah, there's this painting. We want to know what's going on. There was the weird hug, like with Mike, that moment. There's been a lot that's obviously been bubbling away, and he's had these very like close moments with Mike. I'm not too sure what's obviously going to happen. I know that there was the interview that they did with David Harbour, Winona Ryder and co, and Finn Wolfhard. They said he's very much interested in another member of the group this season, and I think obviously it's apparent it's Mike, because there's no one else he could be interested in. I don't know where it's going to go. I think I'm hoping that obviously we know what's on that painting
whatever
by the end of the season.
Whatever happens. I'm just really glad that they didn't I spoke on it briefly earlier when Robin is established as a lesbian character, and that whole thing with her and Steve, and I said it earlier, like when he hasn't outed her. Because Steve's supposed to be this bumbling idiot, and
he's very careful around that, isn't he? Yeah.
He is such a good friend that he's not even told he's not told a single soul. He's been oh my God, and he just wants the best for Robin, and so do I, to be honest. I hope Robin gets to get a love interest. I think that'd be really nice.
Well, it was hinted at obviously with the other person that in the marching band. And I think people knew she was going to be featured in the show. The actress. And I think obviously everyone's kind of like, well, hopefully that's not going to be all of that. I feel like it's probably going to be something that will be revisited again, like, once everything's settled down and we get that like those brief moments after the horror's kind of been defeated. And I think then maybe her and her girlfriend will be part of the crew next season. I feel like that's what's going to happen.
Have you got any wild theories you want to throw out there?
Well, there's a few things that have been noticed about this season, and a few things that I kind of want to point out. So one of the things, going back to Will, is the fact that when Mike arrives in California and they have that whole day, and obviously Will is very, very upset that day, it's actually Will's birthday that day, and no one's remembered. Because when he's tied up and he's possessed by the Mind Flayer, and Joyce has that whole monologue saying, can you remember this? And can you remember who you are? She says, your birthday is March 22nd. And when you see Elle getting videoed on the camcorder in the centre of the rink, it says March 22nd.
Oh, so no.
That made that even more heartbreaking.
And his mum's pissed off to Alaska on a business trip that day.
I know, but then there is that bit where they're at the dinner table and he's like, "What? You're leaving?" And like, I think obviously I find it's all very sad. Another
Poor
thing
Will.
that was maybe noticed, but I think is incorrect. I just think that maybe the actresses look similar. Is that, you know, when we go to the underground lab that Elle is now getting her powers back in, the counsellor works there who was working with Max and co at the school. But I just think it's an actress who looks very similar.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's the same lady, but I mean, obviously that would be maybe a cool tenuous link. They've got someone posted in Hawkins,
it would make
like
sense.
keeping tabs on stuff.
It would make sense.
The ticking noise has been present in previous seasons as well. When you see Billy meeting his upside down version of Billy in season 3, there's ticking noises there, so we don't know whether Vecna has been kind of around all this time.
They do
and he
say
does
he's
get
like,
dragged by a tentacle as well.
They do say he's like the 5-star general of the Mind Flayer. So
Absolutely. So that was a nice link. I thought that was cool. An interesting bit as well about the scene with Billy. He was never actually on set with Sadie Sink as well, which also makes that whole scene even more incredible. So it was essentially a nightmare because COVID happened. He was still in Australia because he's a native Australian. So they couldn't fly him out to where they were filming. So his stuff all had to be filmed and composited into the shots.
Have you seen the behind the scenes makeup stuff? It looks
yes. I mean, the attention to
incredible.
detail, because you really don't see it, unfortunately, like, you know, in the show. I thought, like, because I mean, one of the things when we theorized last special about who we thought Vecna was, one of the things that fed me into the belief that Vecna was going to be Billy was the fact there was this image of him getting like this chest appliance put on.
Yeah.
So I very much thought that that's what that was going to be, but I think it was just obviously the aftermath of STALK and the Mind Flayer ripping chunks out of him. But yeah,
I still would, even when he looks like that.
The other big theory that's circulating about then at the moment, and I mean, I'm going to kind of just say this off the cuff because I've not got it written anywhere, is the fact that there is obviously a huge significance in the fact that the day of that the Upside Down is stuck in is the day that Will went missing, and that Will is maybe more clued in to this whole thing than we'd ever realized. So he is still very much maybe an agent of the Mind Flayer, or he's in fact maybe controlling this whole like dominion at the moment, because the fact it is all frozen in that point of time, he miraculously obviously survived his time there, whereas other characters didn't. There's a lot obviously about that, and I think that's obviously maybe going to be highlighted in the next few episodes. I think it would be a cool reveal that maybe Will has been the big bad this whole time, and it would maybe give him more to do, because I mean, it's kind of like you said, this character's been through so much. We keep revisiting this character, and we're just like, can you just get on with your life? But I suppose it would make sense if he's kind of a part of that. The other thing which I did find interesting as well is another theory about another character, which is Robin, and the fact that she is in fact a Russian spy and has been the entire time.
Oh, that would kill me.
Again, it does kind of make sense in some ways. She's been there since there's been obviously this prevalent Russian influence. She translated the Russian message. Obviously, no harm came to them when they were being interrogated by the Russian agents. There is kind of this whole theory that maybe she's a sleeper agent in Hawkins. So who knows? I think that there's interesting theories. I mean, I love all stuff like that. You know, however crazy it might be. Like I said, I don't hold a candle up to all of them, but I'm excited to see where they go. I think it's going to be interesting.
My theory is the end of the show, and I know we're jumping really far ahead, but I feel like Eleven's not going to see past season 5. Like whatever comes afterwards. I don't think she's going to she'll be too powerful at that point.
Yeah, I think she might kind of I suppose it is Dark Phoenix in a way, and just maybe implode and just kind of become pure energy or whatever. But I don't know. I think one of the interesting things people have said, it would be a nice way to maybe leave the whole thing when they wrap it up season 5, is do a similar thing to the Losers Club in Stephen King's It, and them all kind of make a pact that if, I don't know, so many years down the line, something starts happening in Hawkins again, they come back and they'll take it on.
Well, that's what I really loved about this season as well. It really did remind me of Stephen King's It, purely for, you know, when everyone goes their separate ways and that friendships start to dissolve and stuff. So yeah, and then The House on Nearby Street. My final thoughts on this season, as we just wrap this episode up, is I'm really excited. The fact that I've got to wait a month now kills me a little bit.
Absolutely, dead inside.
But you know, they're keeping the buzz going, which I'm really happy. I feel like we'll see another little teaser trailer coming out soon, which I can't wait for. And I'm just waiting for that soundtrack to drop. As soon as that's dropped, I'm getting the vinyl because I need it. And I need that. If anyone's listening, I need that instrumental. I need that goddamn string arrangement.
It's not quite the same, but there is a piano tutorial on YouTube, which is just an instrumental piano version of Running Up That Hill. And I've been listening to that on repeat, and it's doing the job for me.
Is it the Placebo cover? Because they did that on piano. Oh, okay.
No, it doesn't sound the same, but it does the trick. But going back to the trailer, there is one final thing that does still worry me. Obviously, we have spoken about characters we think are going to get the chop. I don't think Max is out of the woods yet, because
me neither.
there is a shot in the teaser of her by the door, very much how Chrissy was at the start. So she's obviously very much in like Vecna's lair again at some point, which we've not seen yet. And I'm thinking, there's this whole theory as well about the song not actually being a thing. Like, the reason Victor Creel didn't die isn't because he was listening to the song, it's because his son didn't know his powers and had ultimately went into a coma. So maybe this isn't actually preventing Vecna from doing anything.
Oh, God,
so I don't know. I have a feeling she is going to get pulled back in at some point. I suppose the big question for me to you, and I mean, I'm happy to maybe answer this as well, is what song do you think would save you from Vecna?
So I've tried to think of this. So there's 3 songs you can choose from. So there's a song by my favorite band called the Paper Kites, and it's called Electric Indigo. So that would get me out. Kate Bush's Hello Earth would get me out. And there's a song by Bikini Kill called For Tammy Ray. I can't listen to it without crying. So that would those 3 songs would get me out.
So as long as we've got those 3 on cassette, we're fine.
And if you just stick Britney Spears' Blackout album on, that'll probably get me pussy popping in the Upside Down. So yeah,
it's Britney, bitch.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. See, mine are going to be like depressing and weird. I'd probably say Fleetwood Mac Dreams, Lana Del Rey Summertime Sadness. I absolutely love, and also Spectrum by Florence and the Machine. I think is just
the
gorgeous. I'd probably go with the Calvin Harris remix. I'd probably, if we're pussy popping. I mean, nailed it. It's like she's here. What I am disappointed though is the fact that neither of us said Kelly Rowland Commander.
Well, my theory that Vecna was Kelly Rowland is completely out the water, and I'm really
it could be plausible. We don't know.
But what we don't know is. So this is my tenuous Kelly Rowland link. Obviously, her music wasn't around at that time, so that's bear with. Excuse me, I'm recording a podcast, Silver Black. Sorry about that. My cat decided now's the time she wants to knock everything over. It's because I mentioned Kelly Rowland.
She's done with your shit, yeah.
She's getting jealous. What we didn't get was there's like missing parts of people's backstory. So I have a theory. So, do you know the kid who's on Lucas's team?
Yeah.
I want to see his parents' reaction. Now, if they could get
the guy who died above the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
him as a parent. Or my other thing was what they should have done was in that scene where they go to visit Victor Creel, the orderly who was like escorting them there should have been played by Kelly Rowland. And then she should have screamed Freddie at him, and he's like, "My name's Victor." And then Nancy's like, "Oh, my name's Nancy." Oops. And then he's like, "Nancy." See, it's just
the way I'd have got it in is she would have walked into the video store, and Steve would have been like, "What do you want to rent?" And then she would have just pointed at the cardboard cutout and just shouted, "Freddie!"
That's so much better.
So yeah, maybe, I don't know. What is with the butter knives? What is with the butter knives? But anyway, in closing, thank you so much for joining us on this special episode again. I've had an absolute blast watching this season, this part of this season so far. Chatting with you is always a pleasure as well, talking about all things Stranger Things. We will be back to do the same with Volume 2 once that's out, and that episode should then be going live on July 8th. Also, you've got plenty to be looking forward to as well with Pride Month coming up, so please keep listening to the podcast. We've got plenty of new episodes on the way. Keep your eye on the social media channels as well. Yeah,
and we're going to be popping up here, there, and everywhere on other podcasts too.
We're absolutely whoring ourselves out this next month, aren't we? Absolutely.
Gay rights.
Gay rights. But I'll leave it to you to sign us off because you always do such a magnificent job.
So what I really wanted to do was try and find the Russian for it and try and say that, but I can't do that. So until next time, remember that closets were not made for people. They were made for monsters and babysitter killers. Mwah.
Goodbye, I'm from Russia. I am Russian man.
Goodbye, Yuri.
You've been listening to a podcast on the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. To show your support, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can find us on social media in the links in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening.